Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. It's been a while since I've done a full-on statue review. And so what a way to get back into the swing of things by reviewing this masterpiece right here. I think part of the reason, by the way, that I don't do a lot of statue reviews is because I'm just being so lazy and busy lately. And statues over the past, I have to say, maybe 10 years or so, have just gotten crazier and crazier, where just the act of like unboxing them and putting them together, it's become like an entire thing. Like I think I spent, believe it or not, close to 2 hours putting this thing together, and it shouldn't take that long, but it did, and I'll explain why. So next to it is a custom X23, which I'll be reviewing in a future video, and that one is a lot more simple, right? It's bigger. It's like a little bit bigger than quarter scale. I want to say like 1/3.5 scale, and this piece here, of course, is 1/6 scale. So what can I say? How do I start with this piece? So this is a piece called Batman Sanity. It's created by XM Studios, and there's two versions. There's a color version, which is the one I bought, and then there's something called the smoke version, which only has Batman painted in color, and the rest of his rogues gallery is kind of in black and white. Okay, so I got the color version just because I liked it better. I felt that the smoke version, while I definitely understand the artistic reason for why they created that version, to me just made all of the different villains sort of blend in. Now I realize if you go really deep and really detailed, I understand that there's a lot of different shades and that type of thing. Now I'm just gonna get a little bit closer so you can kind of see this in a little bit more detail. I like to go back, because you want to kind of see the whole piece and the impression that the entire piece makes. But again, this thing is just so huge that you go all the way back and you just kind of lose, of course, a lot of the close-up detailing. So I go back so you can kind of get a feel for how amazing this is as a composition. And then I'm going to try to move it a little bit so you can again kind of see what it looks like from the side, so you can get a sense of depth. And then the back is not really meant, in my opinion, to be viewed. It's pretty boring. You just basically see the back of Man-Bat and the back of Clayface and sort of the smoke. So again, not particularly impressive. And then side view here from the other side, again, kind of giving you an idea of the depth of the statue. And when you're hearing this thing creak, that also gives you an idea of just how heavy this thing is. I think it's well over 60 pounds when you put everything together. Okay, so getting back to the different versions, I understand that the smoke version, which is the more limited version, I think they only made in the neighborhood about 100 of those. I understand that the smoke version, of course, when you go really close, like say to this level of detail, you're going to see a lot more shading in the paint app. But it's never like a good sign when XM Studios, the producers themselves, had to, in the description, sort of like justify the cost of the smoke version by explicitly saying, we realize it may look at first glance as just a simple unpainted statue. But no, it's not unpainted. We're actually painting all the different shades of the grays and whites and stuff like that. In my opinion, that's kind of like, okay, you have to explain yourself, right? To say that this is not as as lazy as it looks. So I understand definitely the fine art aspect of the smoke version, but I didn't like that. I think this is a very good Batman. Certainly has nothing to be ashamed of. Kind of excellent. Excellent anatomy, good paint apps, but I have to say this is not a spectacular Batman. Okay, this is not like one of the best Batman statues ever made or anything like that. It's just very good. It's very solid. And why I understand that then the smoke version making him the only one in color sort of ties the piece together and is trying to again get into the sort of the psychology of this piece, which is that you're seeing all of his greatest villains sort of coalesce, and it's in his mind, it's his nightmares. I get that, but to me at least, I feel like the Rogues Gallery in this composition is every bit as amazing as Batman himself, and even more so. And I didn't like them being forced into the background because of the paint application, and then raising focus on just Batman himself. So it's just a matter of personal preference. I prefer not to have his Rogues Gallery portrayed as almost ghosts. I wanted them in their full color glory. So this is why I chose the color version. So let's now kind of start from the very beginning. This thing was first teased over 2 years ago, and it's the design was by a guy named David Finch, and when I first saw it, it's just one of those statues that instantly sort of captures your imagination. It's an instant sort of Grail level piece, and nowadays, because of just space limitations, I really can't pre-order any more pieces without running out of room, both in my storage locker and at home. And I have to basically, the criteria now for considering even pre-ordering a piece has to be like life-changing. It has to be like an amazing, like sort of, almost like groundbreaking new thing, right? And for those of you who collect, you'll know that there are going to be certain pieces that are almost like universally acknowledged to be Grail level pieces in the future. And for instance, the Hulkbuster from XM Studios was one such piece. And this is another one where the minute you see it, it's just such a striking, unique, amazing design that you knew with 100% certainty this is going to be a Grail level piece. And I felt like I had to have that in my collection. I don't collect DC pieces. I have very, very few DC pieces. And I typically don't collect 1/6 scale anymore, which is what this is in. But again, it was such a powerful composition, powerful idea, powerful art design. I felt that, I had to make the exception and just buy it as a standalone work of art. So just talk about, I guess, the logistics of it before getting too deeply into the actual statue and kind of lovingly going over all of the details. So this thing does come in 2 boxes. And, I guess I was kind of silly. I thought that maybe the smaller box would be where the base was, and then all the different characters would be in layers in the bigger box. But I couldn't be more wrong. In point of fact, most of the characters were in the smaller box, and the big box only had 2 layers, but it had the incredibly heavy base, and then it had Clayface in the other layer. And it was, beyond heavy, like heavier than the Hulkbuster. I really feel like when you put everything together, it's definitely like, over 60 pounds. And most of that weight, I would have to guess at least 30 pounds of that weight is this crazy looking base. And this base is not actually that, amazing. It basically has Bane already prefixed, so Bane here is part of the base, and we'll get to him in a second. And if you look at the back, it's just basically, the whole, smoke sculpture, and it's got, the rock formation, granite. That's basically it. This is the base, but they had to make it. It feels like they made it completely solid. Because this thing weighed a ton. It was so heavy, I actually partially strained or sprained my fingers getting it out, and I could not lift it. It's like literally in over 20 years of collecting, this was like the first base where it was so heavy I could not lift it out of the box. I had to actually turn it to the side and then kind of millimeter by millimeter inch it out, and then catch it as it fell out of the styrofoam. It's backbreaking just moving the base. And so, while I love this piece dearly, one of the little tiny nitpicks is that did the base really have to be that heavy? I understand that because, of course, you're putting all of these different, characters on it, and if the base wasn't heavy enough, it runs the risk of tipping. And of course, for whatever reason, the decision was made. I mean, I guess it's an easy reason to see why. The decision was made to have the biggest characters, the most massive ones, which is Clayface and Man-Bat, on the back of it. So without the weight, you run the risk of those two characters basically tipping the whole thing back. So it's a stability issue, but it definitely kind of destroys you because of shipping, and it also runs the risk of damaging the statue, and I'll get to that in a bit. So number one, incredibly heavy with more than half the weight in the base alone. And so now let's get to kind of the idea. So obviously you see Batman in his sort of it's almost like a Jesus-like pose, and he's surrounded by his greatest villains, by his rogues gallery. And Batman has in my opinion, Batman has the most famous rogues gallery of all comic book heroes. There's basically so amazing, so classic, and they basically in this composition managed to squeeze almost every single major recognizable villain onto this piece, with one notable exception, which I do find kind of unfortunate, tragic. We'll get to that, of course, at the end. So let's just go through the different characters. So we start with Clayface back here. He's on the very back, and then we have the Joker, of course. He should be front and center, almost as important as Batman himself, his most famous villain. And then we have Man-Bat in the background. And then we have, of course, Two-Face. And with Two-Face, you have his, his coin that he flips. He has his gun on that side as well. And what I like is how each of the different villains, they're able to so beautifully capture the essence of each character. I mean, it's hard enough to do with one character, but for you to do it with like 11 characters and then 12 if you include Batman himself, is just sort of nothing short of amazing, right? So let's move along. You have the Scarecrow down over here with his poison gas gun. You have Poison Ivy right over here. Catwoman, Harlequin, so those are the Gotham girls. And then, of course, Mr. Freeze on this side. And at the very bottom, you have the Penguin and Bane. So if you back up a little bit, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 of his greatest villains surrounding him. And this kind of just sort of, summarizes, I think, Batman in a nutshell in terms of just why he's so great, why he's so popular, both, his story and, of course, all the great villains that he's had to face over those decades. Now, of course, the one villain that is missing, which a lot of people have brought up, you just can't ignore it, is for whatever reason, they were not able to fit the Riddler into this composition. I don't know how you can avoid the Riddler. I don't know how you can forget about him. I consider the Riddler along with the Penguin and the Joker to be sort of like the original, the big three. Certainly much more known than Clayface or even Man-Bat, but they weren't able to get him in there. And I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, of course, this is the composition that was made. This was the art design that was made. And now that's in front of you, it's obviously really difficult to be able to tell from here and from this perspective how in the world you would be able to squeeze the Riddler in a way that would do him justice. But you have to feel like maybe they could have done something to do that. Or at some point, did nobody say, like, how can you create this and include Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow and Clayface and not have the Riddler? You have the Joker and the Penguin, but not the Riddler. You have Bane. It just seems unbelievable, right? That this could have been allowed to get past the concept stage without them going back and going, well, if you're going to break the bank anyways. I mean, by the way, because of shipping, this statue, at least where I got it, from Spec Fiction, cost like $3,000, including shipping. So if you're going to break the bank and sell a statue that's going to be that expensive and that ambitious, then why did you stop, and not get the Riddler? Did you, did you think that, putting the Riddler into this piece and expanding it a little bit would take the statue from 2,500 or whatever to 3,500? It's hard to believe that, right? So that is kind of a pretty big problem. And they knew about it because feedback, remember, from concept to actual production, XM does take a lot of time. And for some of their super ambitious pieces like Hulkbuster or Batman Sanity, it sometimes takes them 2-3 years before they're ready to ship. Another one, Hulk Transformation, which I've done a review on, was a similar time frame, many, many years. And to the point where literally I've forgotten, sometimes I have them on pre-order, and it finally comes in and the balance becomes due. So they knew about this because, of course, there's a lot of fan feedback. Of course, it was pretty stunning, and the fans loved it. But everybody's like, "How can you not have the Riddler?" And so their response was to put this little Easter egg. And so this is like the representation of the Riddler on this piece, which is just this little question mark. And again, for the description of the statue, they explain that's their little Easter egg to represent the Riddler, which is cute, but this is not, again, something that we had in mind when we wanted this. So I think that's another kind of major knock against this piece. If you want to be very fair and unbiased, is that the lack of the Riddler as one of the rogues gallery is kind of a significant detractor. Now, I don't want to go off base too much. There was a custom piece that was clearly a ripoff of this piece, a copycat where somebody took the concept and then sculpted another version very similar, and they squeezed the Riddler in. Now, that piece, in my opinion, is not as good as this piece. It's a little bit offensive what they did, but it showed obviously that it was possible. It was possible to create another composition where the Riddler was included. You have to give credit to Mr. David Finch and the XM team, because in the world of statues where everything is copycat, it's like the 100th, literally, right? A Wolverine statue or Batman statue, and everything's being done to death. They came up with something that's never been seen. They came up with this amazing, beautiful art piece that kind of almost transcends simple comic book statues, and goes into, again, the realm of a centerpiece work of art. And you have to give them credit for that. And I think the custom artist who then took that initial incredibly unique flash of brilliance, and then they wrote it piggyback style, and they did something very, very similar, but they squeezed in the Riddler. While that was nice, I cannot give them that credit. I cannot give them that same admiration as the original team that did this, the imagination required to do this, okay? But it is a big disappointment that the Riddler is not here. And people will always kind of, I think in a way, hold it against this piece. And again, if it sounds like I'm complaining too much and nitpicking, it's just like, this is one of the best statues, in my opinion, ever made, obviously. It's so ambitious, so stunning, and we'll get into that as we delve further into the details. But again, losing the Riddler conceptually is one of the biggest flaws of the statue, unfortunately, okay? But enough moaning and complaining about what isn't there. Let's now look at what is here and what makes it amazing. So the base, we kind of already talked about. There's really nothing too amazing about the base. It is, the conceit is that it's, his fantasies, his dreams, it's in the mind, and so there's like kind of the smoke swirling around all of these villains that he's fought over the years. And in that respect, the smoke version would convey that idea much better, because the villains, when they're painted like there's smoke, really seems to be coalescing out of the smoke of the subconscious. So that's a much more powerful way of trying to play on that aspect. Here, it feels more solid, but you still have the hint of that smoky base, okay? So how should we do it? I guess maybe we can work bottom up. So one of the things that's the most amazing about the statue is they took 11 characters, and each one of the characters is iconic, and they have these iconic traits, right? And they were able to design a look for each of them that sort of beautifully makes them unique. And so, as an example, we have here the Penguin, okay? And you can take a look at the details they put in. So he's in his, of course, classic top suit, and he has his little umbrella there, and you can take a look at his face. So not again like cartoon version, but almost like a semi-realistic design, and then you can actually see the little gold chain of his monocle. So they spared no expense on the little tiny detail, right, of each character. So here you have the Penguin, beautifully done, and then you have a Bane, and they even made this this weird. I don't even know how they did this. It's like it kind of casts this greenish glow, and it's not light up by any stretch of the imagination. But you can see Bane's incredible shoulders and how big he is, and they made him kind of coming out of the clouds. Try to see if I can even get a shot of his face. So there you go, right over there. He's looking up. You get a hint of his, how massive he is. I mean, look at his T-shirt. It's actually going down over his huge, ridiculous chest. So you can see sort of the canister with is it called venom, or whatever you call it, that thing he uses to, jack himself up. So again, they got Bane right. A very nice umbrella for the Penguin, right, as well. And then over here, of course, you have Poison Ivy. I think of the girls, she's maybe the weakest in a way, but she has her kind of classic green skin, and then she's looking up. Of course, all of them is looking up at Batman, and then in the background, you can sort of see the trunk of the vines that Poison Ivy will be controlling right over here, which is a bit obscured with Catwoman, but the vine goes all the way up. You can see the vine actually wrapping around Batman's right leg. So, again, very nice. And then you have Catwoman, who, in my opinion, is the prettiest face right here. So she's a very, very nice face, beautifully sculpted. And she's got the prettiest face, of all the girls. Done very well. The flesh tone painting, exceptional. And then, of course, in her, black suit, excellent. Excellent detail. You can see her belt with a cat buckle, and then you can actually have her clawed fingers in the back, and that's detachable. And even though you'll never see it on the finished piece, they did put the little sharp points on it. They did actually did not spare any expense to make it really noticeable. So definitely very good as well. You can see her other gloved hand, sort of along the left side of her face, very natural move. So very, very good composition, a pretty classic Catwoman. And then of course you have the Scarecrow with his hands kind of grasping at Batman himself. And then he has the fear gas connected to the sprayer in the right hand. So again, excellent depiction of the character. And then you have Harlequin right on over here, and she's in her classic costume, and then with the big mallet that's so often associated with her. So again, you have the Gotham girls, these three right over here. You have Mr. Freeze with his ray gun, his ice gun, and they have this clear dome that you put on separately. And he again is here with his classic costume as well. Very nicely done. And then we looked at Two-Face. Over here, I have to go underneath Man-Bat's wings to get a look at his scarred half right over here. Beautifully done. And then let's take a little bit closer look at his face. And of course, they gave you the little gold coin, and then he has his gun on the other side. And finally, moving around to the back, you have the massive Clayface. It's a beautifully sculpted and painted Clayface, good enough to be its own statue, really. And then, of course, on the other side, you have Man-Bat with his huge spread eagle wings. And of course, in the very center, with his hand over his left shoulder, in a way, almost like this very intimate pose, is the Joker himself with his little bang gun. And he's the last one that you put into the position of the piece. So all told, this is Batman Sanity with his greatest villains, and just kind of going through again and showing you all of that wonderful detail, the paint, the sculpt, and the art design where you're actually getting every single aspect of these different characters' essences and putting it all together and then sort of composing all of it so that by their gesture and their gaze, you direct all of the attention to Batman himself. There's not as much to say about him. He's in his classic suit. The anatomy is good. It's not earth-shaking. There's been better anatomy sculpted, but it's solid. And he's just sort of, standing there being the center of all of that attention. So, since all the attention is focused on Batman, he has to be well done, and he is. But again, not, particularly spectacular. He's, solid. So that's kind of the thing that kind of makes the piece is every single villain is depicted so beautifully, and then all of it kind of comes together, and you're able to fit them all in, and they each have their little story to tell, and it doesn't look like a basically jumbled mess, which is the greatest achievement by David Finch, is that he created this composition that gives everybody kind of their own moment to shine. And it doesn't feel like it's this, again, random crowd of faces and bodies. The composition ties together very beautifully. And to craft 11 people, 11 villains of such distinct backgrounds and art styles together is an amazing achievement. So there you go. I mean, the one thing, again, is that because of the weight of the statue, there is going to be risk of damage, because in order for them to transport this piece, everything had to be done through conveyor belts. And when you have something that heavy, it was tremendous impact. I mean, the box I got from XM, it was pretty well protected, but there was like a huge rent along one side that shows you the ridiculous amount of impact that this thing had to go through. And then unfortunately, Clayface did come with his arm snapped straight off. Now, I managed to repair it and glue it just so I can do this review. But I don't know if you can tell where that damage is, which is it this arm here. So I'm gonna leave it to you to see if you can tell which is the arm that was snapped off. Okay, I think it's pretty obvious, but I think I did a reasonable job sort of camouflaging where the crack was. But I went through Todd at Spec Fiction, who I do a lot of some business with, and he reached out, I think, to XM, and they're going to replace the Clayface for me. The only downside is I do have to send the broken one back first, which is not something I'm a big fan of, because at that point I'm going to be missing Clayface, and now I don't have my original Clayface with a snapped arm that I actually glued semi-reasonably, and now I have nothing, and I have to now pray that the Clayface they send me, number one, isn't broken as well, and number two, will actually fit onto my base. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I would prefer that they send me the replacement first, since it's broken through no fault of my own, and then once I get it and everything's fine, then I can either send back the broken one or smash it, which is what Sideshow's policy in the past was. And XM Studios being in Singapore makes this even worse. I really can't fathom why they wouldn't take care of their customer like that. I mean, this is registered. It's not a recast, 100% one of the original owners. It would seem more reasonable to send the replacement first before demanding I send the broken one back. And if you send me the replacement and I don't send you the broken one, I don't smash it, you can of course then just bill me and charge me for the difference. So that is a little bit of an annoying detail, but I will of course take Clayface off and put him in a box and ship it back, and hopefully I won't wait too long for a replacement to come, and hopefully that replacement is appropriately packaged and buffered so that's not broken. If that's broken, then we're now in uncharted waters and very difficult, because you took away my good one with the with the clean break that I glued, and now you may not be able to give me an appropriate replacement. And of course, there's always the suspicion that they're going to repair the one that you gave them back rather than replace with a brand new one that's not broken in the first place. So that is a criticism, in my opinion, of the return policy. And I'm one of only 388 people in the world who has this. When I registered, I'm one of only 6 people at last count who's registered in the United States of America. I do feel like XM, for the money they're charging and for the quality of this piece, they need to be a little bit better about that customer service. You shouldn't be asking your international customer to send something back by way of a distributor all the way before you even take care of them. So that part is not very good, and especially when there are other companies that do better. And so I have to criticize fairly as I see it, and so that is an issue. So overall, this is, again, a stunning piece. I knew it was going to be a grail when I bought it. I'm so glad. It sat in my garage for the better part of 2 months. I just did not have the time or the will or the energy to put it together. And if I want to move this piece, I have to take it apart and move it, because the base itself is going to kill you to just move the base with any of these characters on it. But again, if you want to talk about the major, the major downsides, no piece is perfect. I would, but if you want to criticize, obviously, conceptually speaking, the fact that there's no Riddler, that's a major problem. They could give a nod to him with a question mark in the smoke, but that's just not good enough. And so, no Riddler, that's a big problem. The weight of the piece leads to the damage, and their response to it. I mean, apparently Todd told me that Clayface snaps that are pretty commonly, and it's not easy to see. It's not hard to see why. The casting for Clayface was a little bit thin. No more than about 2 to 3 millimeters at some points. Now, of course, they should have made him a little bit more solid, at least in the arm area. But if you do that, you increase the weight on an already ridiculously heavy statue even more. So I understand why they're trying to thin cast, especially Man-Bat or Clayface. But then you should have been a little bit more intelligent about where you're going to put these guys, because putting Clayface in a 35 plus pound base is just asking for shock damage, and the casting is not thick enough to withstand that. So again, negative number 2, weight is a significant factor, and their engineering and their decision making on how to package it and where they're putting the characters is suspect. Okay, you might have wanted to put some of the lighter characters like Catwoman or Harlequin versus Clayface being in a separate layer in the lighter box would have been better, in my opinion. So that's number 2, and then in terms of just some of the little tiny engineering, it's very difficult to get this umbrella looking correctly. It looks like it's a little bit bent. It's supposed to be nice and straight, but when you put everything perfectly together, that doesn't fit all the way. Again, maybe a hair dryer can take care of that, but it looks good enough that I didn't want to risk breaking another piece. So that is one other little nitpick here. But again, overall, those are the negatives, but the positives, of course, far outweigh it, because this is essentially a generational statue, a completely unique art design, a unique vision, very, very powerful, and definitely the best Batman piece that I've ever seen, because of just everything together. It's not the best Batman statue, but in terms of like Batman himself is not the best, but in terms of the entire concept, if you want a statue, if you have to own one single statue that just sort of encapsulates everything about Batman, then this is it. This is the one, and it's very pricey. It will run you $3,000. That's retail. Now for you to buy this now, it's going to be $4,000, maybe $5,000, and they have to, for the shipping included. But it is one of the few pieces that I would say is worth that amount. Okay, so there you have it. I mean, I hope you enjoyed kind of my thoughts on this pretty unique and beautiful piece. I hope I've given you enough close-ups all the way throughout of all of these different angles and different characters. I just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is absolutely ridiculous, because I never thought, of course, that I would have that many people even interested in my own personal YouTube channel and rambling on about the things I do. I have so many eclectic interests, from dolls to statues to replicas and video games. But I hope that I've entertained enough of you and given enough content that you're still interested in following me. And so I wanted to thank, of course, all of the subscribers who happen to be watching this video. And I think it is a fitting video to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope to be making more videos a bit more regularly in the future with, again, different statues and different content that I find interesting. And hopefully you will too. You know, I still have quite a few things that I think is pretty rare and pretty unusual for you to find. Now, as it is on YouTube, for private collectors, there's the huge Batman collector on YouTube. I think he's called Batman Collector. But aside from him, there aren't that many videos of something like of this piece, you know, specifically. So I just wanted to kind of add my voice and my experience and my particular video to that. And I'm just sort of turning this piece around little by little before I end it. You can catch a lot of the beautiful texturing and, you know, and work for all these different pieces. Look at the veins, Man-Bat's wings, and then of course Clayface looking like, you know, like splotchy mounds of clay. His big arms, and of course a beautiful face right there, very, very nice. And then Batman himself. So Two-Face, yeah. There's no real weaknesses in terms of the characters that are here. Really, really good. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, do take care. Thank you again for 1,000 subscribers. And wish me luck that I get a good Clayface replacement because I'm really going to be tossing the dice on this one. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Until next time, do take care.